our kids most need to be able to endure the likely bullying that is going to come at them is they need to have a safe and secure base. They need to have a foundation that's been established with their parents and their family members that is one of unconditional love and acceptance.
So, Andrew, one of the things that happens to a lot of autistic children, especially those who go to mainstream schools, is bullying. And of course, that's devastating for the child. It's often devastating for the parent as well, who doesn't know, what's going on or how best to support the child. What could you say to a parent to help them understand, first of all, maybe what's going on for a child, and what makes autistic children particularly susceptible to bullying?
Yeah. Guy, bullying is an incredibly complex dynamic. And I think it's important to not oversimplify it because I think parents need to see very clearly what's playing out when children are bullying other children and when their particular autistic child, is being targeted. So there are many different layers to it. The first one I would say is like the foundation of all of it is what our kids most need to be able to endure the likely bullying that is going to come at them. Is they need to have a safe and secure base. They need to have a foundation that's been established with their parents and their family members that is one of unconditional love and acceptance. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that so much is because what we're learning from so many autistic adults now who themselves have been through growing up autistic and being bullied and targeted was that one of the most important factors for them was having a relationship or multiple relationships with adults in their lives where they felt like they could really be who they were, where they felt loved, where they felt accepted for who they were, even if who they were was different, was not neurotypical, right?
Yeah,
even if who they were was having a unique brain and central nervous system. And the reason why that's so important is because when kids from their relationships with their parents get the message that there's something wrong with them, that they have to basically not be autistic or not be their full autistic selves to be accepted by their families, I think that then sets up a much more greater vulnerability around being targeted, being bullied, and then internalizing the brutality of that in much deeper ways. So I think I'm saying that because bullying in this day and age is likely, and it is just a part of living in societies that are very brutal, and unfortunately that where we see these cycles of bullying repeating themselves from generation to generation. Where people that look or appear different than the norm get targeted and mistreated. I don't think that's going away. I don't think we can stop or prevent that because it's very big and complex. But I think we can help our kids have a sense of themselves as autistic people, that they are every bit as beautiful and valuable and wonderful as any other child. And I think that's a message that we keep hearing loud and clear from autistic people.
So are you saying that what they go home to it makes all the difference in the world? Because if they're getting bullied at school and they come home to a house where everybody's busy, nobody's got time for them, the people are maybe shouting at them for all sorts of things, it's just going to make them feel more alone and more isolated and less understood. However, if they come home to a house with very loving parents who are, I mean, all parents are loving, but parents who demonstrate and leave them in no doubt, about their love for them, and who spend time with them and make that connection with them, and make the space for them and make the place as safe as possible for them. It's not going to take away the bullying, but it's going to give a different dimension to their lives, which will give them an underlying strength, and meaning that however devastating the bullying is, it will have less of a devastating longer term impact.
Yes, and there's a lot that, again, we won't cover here in terms of how parents can try to prepare their children for bullying situations and how to really protect themselves and take care of themselves to the best of their ability in those moments. This is something much deeper, and I think, again, something very important for parents to consider. It's one thing to be given the message from a peer group that you're different and somehow less worthy or somehow less deserving of respect and love than everybody else. Like, it's one thing to get that message from your peers. It's another thing to go home to that same message coming from well-intentioned parents who have bought into this notion that autistic is somehow less human.
Yeah.
That autistic is somehow less valuable, less brilliant, less beautiful, that an autistic person has somehow less strength and and capability than a neurotypical child. So I think it really I think it's really important to me to get that message to parents of autistic children, that they play a significant role in shifting that message that society is going to be bombarding autistic children with, that you're somehow less than if you're autistic. Our families have to step up and say that's not true.
And especially in those moments when they need the reassurance even more. And so if a child is getting, and though these things that a parent can do to prepare their child for bullying, that sounds really valuable, and maybe we can do a separate video on something like that at some point as a sort of spin-off of this one. But if a child is being bullied but doesn't talk about it, how can the parent know? How can the teachers know? How could parents and teachers pick out the signs that will alert them that something is going on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, I think in many ways it's important to say that different children are going to manifest those symptoms differently,
Yeah.
are going to sort of show the effects. But we certainly know that one of the big, there's a lot, the emphasis, for example, in a dynamic like school refusal, right? Like kids that are literally refusing to go back to go to school. That underneath that oftentimes is that a child is having such difficult, overwhelming, traumatic experiences at school, whether it's just in the classroom or whether it's because they're being bullied by their peers or even perhaps by their well-intentioned teacher who doesn't understand, neurodiversity and autism. But oftentimes, again, parents are seeing this as an issue of a defiant child, where, again, a child who's saying, I don't want to go to school, perhaps is also saying, I don't feel safe at school.
Yeah.
I am absolutely terrified and I can't function when I'm in that environment, and I'm not getting the support that I need. And so sometimes, again, a very straight up indicator is a child who's saying, I don't want to go back to school. I don't like school.
And you've talked about this sort of thing before as well. It's like looking behind what the child is saying. We see a behaviour. We might interpret it as defiance. We might interpret it as naughtiness in some way. Whereas actually, maybe it would be worth asking what's going on and what's causing this reaction.
Yeah, and what we know about all children is that children desperately need opportunities where they're getting feedback from the world that says you are worthy and you are good and you have strength. And if they're in an environment all day long where all that's happening is they're getting targeted, they're getting feedback from the people around them that you're failing, that you're not good at this, because again, they're being put in impossible situations where they perhaps don't have um, the ability in terms of executive functioning, or perhaps their sensory system is so overloaded when they're in the classroom, that they're just in coping mode, that their brains are offline, they're not thinking very clearly about what's being asked of them. And so in these situations, our kids often it's like having a mirror in their face all day that says, you're no good, and you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And so a big part of that is, again, looking much deeper at our kids need opportunities to feel like they can shine, like they have good stuff to offer the world that's reflected back to them. And I think that's what we're learning and seeing so much in this day and age, is that all kids need that. And our especially our autistic and neurodivergent kids need that even more, because they live in societies that are not set up for their unique brains to flourish, to be well supported. We have a very neurotypical system that's set up to support the flourishing of a non-autistic or sort of neurotypical person or brain. And so our kids are kind of heading into school, right? And they're heading into the world already with two strikes against them. So we have to really think about that, and therefore do whatever we need to do to strengthen our kids' self-picture and sense of themselves as having strengths and capabilities, and give them opportunities to show just what they're capable of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they're not having those opportunities at school, it's going to be a very, very overwhelming and scary situation.
So what could a teacher do to help? Because, a parent might know there's something wrong if the child doesn't want to go to school, or comes back from school and behaves in a different way than the parent is used to, or something changes over time. For a teacher, I don't know, I'm guessing it might be that the child maybe refuses to do their work, or to do what the teacher says, or something like this, or doesn't want to go swimming or something. If a teacher does notice these sorts of signs and thinks there may be some sort of bullying going on, what can they do to either support the child in school, or to help the child, or to help that situation end?
Yeah. It's complex, Guy, because it depends heavily on the teacher themselves, and also on the support or lack of that the teacher themselves has in that particular school environment. And my heart goes out to teachers. I have an educational background. I was a paraprofessional in schools for many years, and I saw teachers greatly overwhelmed and stressed with this task of having to support an incredibly diverse group of learners without really enough resources to do that well. So I think we have to recognize that our teachers are always doing the best they can. But I think if, from a teacher's perspective, teachers need to be able to just see what's happening clearly, and then really think about it in terms of, I would say, what we're learning from the neurodiversity movement is how important it is to normalize that all of us have different brains and are going to need to be supported in individual and different ways to flourish in a classroom. So a child who, for example, needs to get up and move around more frequently, right, to sort of, to work with their own central nervous system needs, that has to be recognized and supported and normalized, versus the old traditional model, which is kids need to sit in a particular way and learn by sitting and attending and staying put in their seats. And right, so a big excuse me, a big part of it has to do with how much room or not the teacher has to be able to shift and loosen expectations of what what students need to be successful in their classroom. So again, I see this as it's just recognizing that everybody has different and unique learning styles and needs, and this is not about fitting sort of an autistic student into a particular set of expectations. It's saying, what does this one student need, and then this student and this student, and how can we have a classroom that supports a range of different learning needs, and that it's no big deal, right? That each student is going to have their own perhaps need for being supported that's going to look different than the student sitting next to them. But again, this is shifting, Guy, what we've seen as traditional education. It's really pulling a lot of those more traditional assumptions and ways that we've thought about teaching and learning environments.